Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Digital Marketing live show number 167. That is right, 167 times each and every week we have come to you live, which puts us into our fourth year, which is always great and fun. And we have had some great co-hosts, great guest hosts, and some great content, of all of which nobody's here right now. But I hopefully will be joined shortly by some of my other co-hosts, Mr. Robert Cole from Rock Cheetah, or Mr. Tim Peter from Tim Peter and Associates. Perhaps a sneak peek of Stuart Butler from Fuel Travel. I know Mr. Edward St. Ange with FlipTube won't be able to join us today. He has a prior commitment to it. I don't know if Fallon Perini with Nor One will be joining us, or Darlene Rondeau with Amadeus. Pegasus. Sorry, with you today, as we always talk about, we wanted to restructure ourselves a little bit more concisely so that those who do tend to listen to us, which are a little over 6,000 of you, which is amazing. Thank you so very much, in 28 countries at this point. We want to make sure that we have some sense of continuity as to what we're going to be talking about a little bit about today. And I think Mr. Robert Cole will be joining me in just a moment. But in the meanwhile, let me go over to give you some of the highlights. Mr. Robert Cole does curate our list that we use. We do share that list with the marketing board of HSMAI. To show them what we're going to be talking about. It's a well-curated list. Mr. Robert, how are you, sir? He's staring at me. He's looking at me, but he's not saying.
I'm doing well. No, this time, Lauren, I have a new strategy. I've decided to wait for the microphone to turn on before I start speaking with you, which I normally start speaking with you before the microphone's on. So,
I did like that moment of silence in the mind. But anyway, I wanted to take some of your topics that you put into it. You did have an interesting, which I deservedly so is a top story, and that is U.S. lodging performance fell short of expectations in 2017, which I thought was an interesting top story and well worth the conversation, considering also some of the numbers you have related to September's ADR, which we can throw into that conversation.
Yes.
I think the other, which is a Focus Wire conversation, which I think you might have had a hand in, is the true cost of hotel brand participation online, which I think is well worth the discussion point. And the third one I wanted to go with, and I'm pulling this out because it kind of ties to TripAdvisor playing with Meta on marketing Meta with Google, is the state of MetaSearch from Cody's blog. Because since I was witness to their presentation, I have a lot more perspective suggestions to the content beyond what they put in their article.
Right,
so
because there actually wasn't a lot in that article. Normally Cody has tremendous blog entries, and that one was a little light. So
that was a little bit more self promoting of. We had a board on the Direct Booking Summit stage, and not so much didn't talk about what you talked about, which I have to say also was relatively light and disjuncted. There wasn't a harmony to them, but we'll get to that. The first love to is, of course, the performance issues. Dun, 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 dun. What seems to be a problem? What is the problem in Paradise?
Well, and that actually is the issue. It is Paradise. I mean, this recovery since what? I think the low was somewhere in maybe late 2009, 2010, when you're really looking at the 12-month moving average, and where is the pit of despair? So we're 9 some years at least into that. Into the recovery. So all-time record high ADRs, all-time record high occupancies, and here comes Robert Mandelbaum. He too has changed his name from back years ago when he was known as Rob, and he expanded it to Robert, as some people with that name are prone to doing. But basically what he was looking at was the performance falling short of expectations is versus their budgets, which is an incredibly important number, because these numbers impact the pricing of, or at least what the performance of the major brands, of the management companies who are coming off, who wind up getting their fee revenue as a percentage, generally as a percentage of the hotel performance, and then of course the hotel owners who wind up footing the bill for everything. So what they had in their sample, they budgeted for a 3.2% gain in total operating revenue. And so again, the industry focuses a lot on this top line ADR, occupancy, RevPAR. but not really the operating revenue. And it really should be a no par, go par type thing for net operating profit or gross operating profit, that shows a much better picture of what's going on. So what has happened, the total revenue growth amounted to just 1.7% instead of 3.2%. I mean, that's almost half. That's like what, less than 60% of the forecast, the forecast growth, and that is a real, real number. And rooms revenue made up about 63.8% of that. So basically, there are budget deficiencies in occupancy and ADR were the primary causes of the revenue shortfall. And he goes through to talk about there were some expense efficiencies and things like that, but this is a problem for the industry of, if you have budgets, you would think during peak periods, especially last year came out a little bit better than I think most people planned. I think STR and all the various groups, wound up upping their forecasts through the year that the hotels didn't make enough of their budgets. So there's some disconnects there. I don't know.
I would also add to that unfortunately we get very centric on top line revenue and what that means in the sense of goal settings, and that a lot of and one of the first questions I asked on some of my first initial client engagements is, are you a top line or bottom line focused organization, where it's not so much about how much money you put into the top of the pile, but how efficient those monies are spent in a way that at the bottom you're satisfying owner relationships and what have you. And what they often point to is the top of the funnel thing. Well, we can't yield if we don't, to the bottom if we don't know what's coming up at the top. I'm not saying that's an either or, it's an and. If you're really worried about bottom line revenues, then of course you have to be centric on generating top line revenues so the yieldability is there. But if you're only focused on what's going into the top, then these things you just talked about happen, which is, oh, look at all the money that's coming in the top. Yeah, but what you're looking at is commission-based modeling. You're losing your price strategy. You're getting money from anybody that's giving it to you at whatever level you're getting it from. There is a top line, you're shoving money into the top. Look how good we are. We did all this. But when you break it down, even down to the EBITDA line, it's like it vaporized. Oh my gosh, We're actually at efficiencies. It's costing us more to put the money into the pile at the top than it is to actually get it. I mean, to spend it. I mean, it's already vapored out before we even get any sort of shareabilities or anything else. We're just paying, and sometimes not even paying for generation of money. The marketing costs. I mean, really, honestly, if you're working at a 10% net margin or below, none of your marketing expense should be less than a 10-to-1 return in general, because that means you're actually spending more money to generate. Now, sometimes you need to do that to be in market presence for other channels that are developing better yieldability. You have to put your name out, but that's a fine mix that I have really found very few companies tune well.
Right, and a lot of marketing agencies will tout, hey, you can get a 4-to-1 return, a 5-to-1 return on your spend. Well, if you kind of reverse the math on that, you go, oh, wait a second, a 5-to-1 return, that's 20%. My cost is 20%. That's a lot. Sort of thing. It's less expensive through, say an OTA sort of thing. Now a 10-to-1, yes, that puts you in at 10%. So yeah, that should really kind of be the table stakes, which I think again kind of underlines the challenge for putting expenditures, right? So budget expenditure at risk to get a particular return and to expect that return to happen. I think in this case, the hotel industry, and this is a large sample of hotels by CBRE, they're falling short, which is not great for all these book direct campaigns and things like that. That starts shifting that responsibility more over to, hey, we are taking responsibility for these marketing expenditures. We are not relying on third parties to pay a commission, which is lower risk, but should be higher marginal compensation, which would make sense for that. Instead, they're taking it on themselves and appearing to fall short. One other quick thing is it was both full service and limited service hotels that fell short, right? So you really start looking at those scenarios and start going, that's interesting. Not good news for the industry. I mean, this is a very disturbing analysis, which I don't think I've seen anybody really talk about.
So I'm having Facebook issues. It froze on us for the live feed, and I'm actually trying to reload it back up again for us.
Well, okay, Yeah. Okay. Well, that's okay. I'll fill while you're doing technical things.
Would you be so kind as to draw us to the next obvious?
No, I was going to sing a little. Oh, never mind. I'll stay on top.
While I'm waiting for the page to do something beyond just sit there frozen, I will say this: is that it bothers me about the limited service component of it too, because unfortunately, I think. And one of the complaints I've had about brand and how brand handles its inventory and what it does in the sense of marketing opportunities is it favors the bold, or it favors the full flags, and it allows the limited services to be perennial in their placement in market, but they really don't feature them or push them as much as they should. They commoditize them a lot as just inventory available, and they feature their market sense is towards the more pretty, pristine, full flagged or full service operations in which they can highlight certain things. And I think that because of doing that, then there is a less yieldability to it. And now what we're seeing in some of this revenue generation is that it's actually bringing down them as well, because they're not represented well enough in their markets as well as they should or could be. And because of that, they're being drawn into that same vortex of loss that the full flags are not getting the generated interest that they should be, hence not the revenue. And it's causing this issue that's hitting everybody now.
Well, and actually I'll make two more points on this. One is Robert has a little chart here that has the hotel budget accuracy for 2017 versus 2016. So again, this isn't this year, this is last year, but for occupied rooms, they forecasted an 0.8% increase. The reality, and this is last year, was minus 0.1%. So it was actually down 0.1%. So they missed by almost a full percentage on there. ADR was forecast to be up 2.5, came in at 1.8. So again, that was a little lower. Now, what's interesting is rooms revenue was supposed to be 3.3, came in at 1.7. We mentioned that before. That's a big variance. Total revenue was about the same ratio. Now expenses, they forecasted to be up 2.6%, and they came up 2.3% instead. So that was good. There was some expense efficiency. But here's the killer: EBITDA was forecast to be up 5%, and it wound up being up 0. A 5% swing. That's basically that is your margin on these things, and it did not exist. So that's really a little bit scary. Now, if we move fast forward to this year, since I keep track of the weekly, since 2006, I've kept track of the weekly occupancy and ADR stats for the U.S. hotel industry. In the last let's just look at her occupancy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Consistently, the last 6 weeks in a row, the occupancy starting the week of September 8th, the U.S. hotel industry's occupancy has been negative versus in 2018 versus 2017. So that's not good. It was kind of floating. The year-to-date stuff, through the third quarter was doing okay. It wasn't up wasn't up, in a huge amount. It was actually at a point at the end of the third quarter, it was up a little bit over half a point. If you're looking at a 52-week kind of 12-month moving average, it was up about 0.6 of a point. But now that has swung the last 6 weeks negative, and if that keeps continuing, that's not a good sign. ADR is also kind of flattening out. I think ADR has been up. If you look at it, let's see, year to date, it's up about 2.7%, something in that range. And the 52-week moving average is about 2.5%. So it's still, kind of pushing up, which isn't bad, but that year-to-date change has really been dropping off. If you look at the second quarter, it was up, in the middle of the second quarter, it was up 3.3%, and now it's down 2.6, or now that growth has dropped to 2.7%. So
for those who may not be viewing us, though, we just want to make sure we know Mr. Tim Peter from Tim Peter Associates has joined us.
I wasn't even looking at the video. I was looking at these numbers. So.
I know you were deep into your data, which is why I want to be like, Snap. And so, Tim, just to get you caught up to speed, we are portending the end of days, Armageddon as we know it, the destruction of humanity and hospitality. And we are in the cataclysm of death and destruction.
I had no idea I was saying that. But,
and
okay.
the horsemen are riding. And it's plague and pestilence everywhere.
All right, well, blow up the show.
Yeah.
Let's tear this mother down.
But we're covering it live.
And we're covering it live.
It's like the hurricane. It's like the hurricane coverage. Tim, go outside. We need some out there.
Exactly.
Act like it's windy. No, we were talking about the U.S. lodging performance fell short of expectations in 2017 is our article discussion that we're at right now.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, it's troubling. I mean, I think we are entering. I think we've known for some time there was some softness coming. And I think it's, upon us. So I think the bigger question is, okay, what do you do about it? If you're an individual property, if you're a group of properties, if you're a brand, how do you respond to this? And what's the right thing to do? As ever, I would argue it's not cut price. It's not try to compete on rate. It's not, turn all your inventory over to the OTAs. It's compete on value. It's make sure you're offering a good value to guests and, be very focused on rate parity, especially now because people might, if the economy softens and people are traveling less in a year's time, they're going to be rate shopping more. So rate parity becomes a big play. But it's get ready for the fact that there's going to be some softness out there and be smart about how you go about it. Right? Mm-hmm. It's not. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, I always get concerned when things get soft, and the first thing people say is, "Well, we need to cut marketing spend."
Right. Yes.
It's like, oh golly, oh my gosh, let's talk about the things you don't want to do.
No, wait. If you're grossly overspending on your marketing and it's incredibly inefficient, maybe that is a good scenario.
Correct.
If you're doing a heinously bad job, that might be a good strategy.
Well, sure. I'm often reminded of the former CEO of Apple, John Sculley. Once gave one of the most disastrous interviews you could possibly give as a business leader. He was talking about the fact that Apple at the time was struggling pretty heavily. They were really in bad shape. And he said, what we have is we've got this ship, and the ship has a massive hole in the bottom and is taking on water like crazy.
Hang on.
My job...
One thing very quickly, we had an echo there, Lauren. So we weren't getting the actual quote very well, or we were having this great kind of reverb on the quote. Maybe you had done that through one of your guitar amps, or so you're doing it for effect.
A little spring amplifier. But he said we have this massive ship. I want to get this right. And he said we got a hole in the middle, right? We got a hole in the bottom of the ship, and it's my job to get it pointed in the right direction.
Well, okay. In fairness to Scully, when the thing sinks, he wants it in shallower water.
Scully means scuttle. I mean, he was going with his namesake there.
Yeah, I don't know, but if you've got a hole in the bottom of the boat, the first thing you want to do, call me crazy, is stop the leaking.
I think one of the only times
to actually speed up. Too, because you can have the force, the physics of the water, depending on the side. If it's at the the front of the boat, but he said in the middle
is breaking down, Robert.
If it's in the middle. I will say the only I've been in leaky boats before. If you speed up, that can actually pull the water out. Perhaps, depending on the.
The only time I think I ever really truly got into trouble, to add to your point, Tim, was in 2008 when all the stuff hit the fan. And we're all sitting around, and my ownership that I was working for at the time pulled the plug on pretty much every marketing effort. Yeah. And up to that point, we're fighting for inches. I mean, we were fighting for inches in space. Right. And all of a sudden, I saw this vast horizon open up, as if the armies retreated, and it was like I could just walk as far as I wanted to walk, marketing-wise, and reclaim any marketing demand I ever wanted. Where minutes ago I was fighting to get an inch ahead, and they said we're not spending any more money on marketing. Batten down the hatches, metaphor there. We're just gonna weather this out with operational yield. And I actually said that they were stupid. Not a smart thing to do to your ownership group. But it's just like that is one of the stupidest things. Yeah. Fortunately, they took it as you've been smart so far. We're gonna let you be dumb once in a while. Where because they didn't can me out of there. But it was, to me, it was the stupidest thing in the world. I could claim so much marketing opportunity. Now, at the end of it, they were brilliant people. They sold inventory at the right time at the highest rate. They did lots of smart things. But I still, to this day, will hold true that had they been allowing me the opportunity, even to keep the funds that I had, that when we did have this come out of the market scenario that we had, we would have been dominant in so many markets because we would have kept our presence. So yes.
So I was at Leading when the 2008 downturn hit. We lost, when Bear Stearns went under alone, we lost about 3,500 room nights off the books the day that they vanished. I mean, the company went under and immediately we were down 3,500 room nights because we'd had contracted business with them. And we did very well for many of the properties. I would love to say everybody did spectacularly and the like. That would not be true. But we built quite a few value add programs. We really got smart about marketing, less about rate and more about putting value adds into packages, putting together special packages, special offers for valued customers, right? Who are the folks who are most likely to stay with us, and offer them something of value. But it was never a rate program, right? It was never, we're going to drop rates by 20% or tell people we're dropping rates by 20%. It was, we'd add 20% more stuff in for the same rate. And so we were able to hold rate. And for the most part, found that was very successful, for most properties. Obviously, some folks struggled. Some markets, right? I mean, obviously, anytime you're in a downturn, some markets are going to do a little better than others just because of demand and the like. Obviously, there were markets where airlines pulled, flights out of the market and the like, so that had some effects. But generally speaking, by being smart and being really focused on offering value and being really smart on continuing to market, efficiently. And Robert, you're exactly right. Like if you're doing stupid stuff, well, you should stop that when times are good too.
You should do it all the time. Exactly.
You should do that all the time. Right. Why do I hit myself in the head with a hammer? Well, because it feels so good when I stop. Right.
That's right.
Yeah. So if you're hitting yourself in the head with a hammer, you might want to stop that regardless of whether times are good.
Let's do some A/B testing on that.
Exactly. So yeah. So I think this is an interesting thing to watch. Obviously, it's an important thing to watch. I also, think the worst thing you can do is panic, right? Or start slashing all over the place. It's more about, if you need to panic for a day to make yourself feel better, great. Then breathe into a brown paper bag, get your feet back under you, and start saying, okay, what are we going to do given this reality?
Yeah. Well, and if you look at when those rates, or actually when that downturn occurred, what was happening was the hotel industry had already peaked from an occupancy percentage.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out, a year before, it was a good number of months before. And I'll try to see if I can figure out the all-time.
I thought it was like June of that year or something like that, or maybe March.
Oh, no, it was way before. It was the year before. I think it was in 2007.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
It was actually the break. Probably can't dig it out right here, but it was months. It was maybe 12 months before, 15 months before, something like that. That really, when you're looking at these kind of 12-month moving averages, you go, oh, occupancy is kind of coming down a bit.
Yeah.
But everything was being pushed by rate, and boy, then you had that one disruptive event, and crack, right? And so the same. Not that there's a big disruptive event coming. Okay, Lauren maybe jumped to the Armageddon thing a little quick here. But maybe a bit of hyperbole there, just a tad. But the same sort of thing's happening. I mean, we're coming off of this peak. Everything's being pushed by rate. If there is some sort of financial disruption to financial markets, geopolitical markets, those sorts of things that have happened in the past, watch out. That is what triggers the big correction, right?
Well, so it's a good time to do some scenario planning and start thinking about, I forget who came up with this, but it's what's the best case scenario, what's the worst case scenario, and what's the weird case scenario, right?
Yeah, or the most likely, best case, worst case, most likely case.
Yeah.
But
And then the real oddball thing, the wild card that gets thrown in there, and just think about, okay, what do you intend to do in each of those examples? And again, I think it's focus on the basics. Rate parity, be really smart about how you offer value to your guests.
Mm-hmm.
Don't cut marketing, and I don't say that because I'm a marketing consultant. I don't care who you do it with. Don't cut marketing because you're just giving away share to your competitors. It's a great time to pick up market share. And offer value. Let the downturn be your competitor's problem.
Yeah.
Right? When it comes.
Yeah, you're going to have to deal with, but in that downturn, you need the best positioning because if you're well positioned, that is when you can gain. That it's argued that's the only time you can truly make significant share gains.
That's right. Also, if you need to do renovations, it's a great time to do it. Take some rooms out of inventory and get some work done. Right? I mean, you're going to have to do it at some point. Better to do it if you're going to be fighting for occupancy anyway, versus when you're full.
But again,
the New York. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. If you're highly leveraged, that gets tough when people are trying to meet the mortgage. Things like so again, you want to have all these guys who they cut back on the reserves, they do all the, and folks will do that to kind of boost the bottom line in good times, and hey, we're trying to do this and look at how great we are. But boy, all that stuff winds up coming back to bite you when
right. Yeah, we had our holiday party at the leading hotels of the world at the New York Palace on December 30th, December 25th, whatever. Not the 25th, obviously, but mid-December of 2008. And it was funny because the last thing they were doing at the New York Palace was hosting a New Year's Eve party on December 31st, 2008. And then they were closing for a year to begin a $140 million renovation. And they could not have timed that more effectively if they'd wanted, and they'll be the first to tell you.
That wasn't the story I heard. I heard your party was so wild. They had to shut the place down to basically handle repairs. So
I paid Ted Tang a lot of money to keep that story under his hat. Apparently that did not work out.
Yep. Ted, I heard Ted was just out of control that night.
Make it rain up in here. That's it. But sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, right? I mean, they certainly know the problem was coming when they planned the renovation. They'd obviously planned for some time to be closing their doors on January 1st, and it worked out really well for them because they came out, and reopened. I think 6 or 7 months later. Obviously, things were still tough, but the worst part of it was beginning to slow down a little bit. Right? It wasn't free fall.
Much better strategy than cutting your rates down to match. We're going to go try to grab some business from the 3-star guys, right? And go shift that to full rooms at any. And let me tell you, the recovery from that is horrible.
Well, we've been having this dialogue for 2 years about occupancies are spectacular and rates are low. And rates are low because there are still people digging out from the fact that they slashed rate when times were tough. Oh, yeah.
The next one that we kind of throw into sequence of all this, which kind of lends itself a little bit to our conversation about cost and effectiveness and downturns. And I do, Robert, think that your hands were over this, even though you're not in the byline as to writing this. It was Peter O'Connor's, was the true cost of hotel brand participation online. And I thought it was a nice, concise way of defining some of the not often discussed cost factors associated with the play to participate mentality that comes into this.
I'm going to drop off and come back on because it looks like I'm an empty box. And
you are.
Although some people, well, okay, so the schizophrenia is really. I got to go medicate myself. I'll be back.
Lauren, why don't you set up Peter's point of view here? Because I will tell you, I agree with one of his points a lot. And I disagree with most of the rest of his points even more.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I think Peter O'Connor has an axe to grind. I won't take away. I don't know that for sure. I just have never seen anybody be so negative about the value that brands provide as he consistently is. And
I
I do
would
think
definitely say that this was a one perspective article. In the sense of it,
as many of his tend to be.
Yeah, and just to put into a nutshell, some of what the gist of the article in its context is that don't look at it just from the benefits of what brand says it brings to top line revenue, that their contribution factor and the percentages. There's a real expense associated with the relationship. He breaks it down to four major components to this. He breaks it down to base fees, which are, as he says, literally, I'm going to read it from this, which are sometimes split into royalty or franchise fees, plus a system fee for some of the sorts. The median of these fees for the 48 branded hotels was around 8.5%, which is a little high, but okay.
But I mean, I think he did his math. I don't dispute.
Yeah,
I don't dispute his math. I dispute his findings.
Yes. The second point that he says that are cost effectiveness is loyalty fees. And I'm just going to read these literally because they're short enough to be able to redirect for it. Yeah. Loyalty fees, which cover the cost of running the brand's loyalty programs and paying for guest point accruals. The median of the 48 brand study was around 4.8%. Again, a number that is higher than what I have historically remembered being as well. Then he brings 0.3 loyalty discounts, which are a direct reduction to the room rate typically given to loyalty members who book directly. I assume in a very modest fixed discount of $3, which has a larger effect of lower ADR properties. The median for the 48 brands is around 2.6, which ironically I find to be lower than I remember to be.
Yeah.
So for that one, I actually feel like it's a little inverse. And the fourth and final point he makes about the cost direct consideration is performance marketing fees, which brands charge for bookings that originate from marketing or search channels like Google or TripAdvisor. The median of this was 9%. I would also contest that that was also potentially lower on average than I would have normally given credit to that channel cost. But again, he, as you said, he did his math for it. So those are his four contention points as to what he says needs to be perennially considered in the cost factor relationship of a brand and its brand value proposition. Which one? I mean, obviously you have one particular one that you find distinct differently, but what is it that you find, and it may not be based on those four, but
no, it's not based on those four. It's here's the thing. There's a place where he is absolutely right. Buried deep in the article, late in the article, he points out quite rightly, right? Absolutely correctly that, where is it? I'm looking for the exact line. Well, it's around the point of his formula, but the formula is the part that I take issue with specifically, right? Not that the formula exists, but what he calls it. But give me 1 second, and then I will tell you what he calls the formula. He basically talks about what contribution brings to the table or doesn't, as the case may be, and where he's exactly right. Is he says, that this math that he does clearly demonstrating that a brand that doesn't actually deliver a ton of bookings is an extremely expensive proposition for an owner. Mm-hmm. That is unequivocally true. And I agree with him completely, right? Completely. I'm not defending the brands because I think the brands are great. I'm not defending the brands because I have any particular skin in the game. Yes, my wife works for a brand. But you should be a branded hotel if it makes sense to be a branded hotel. And you should not be a branded hotel if it does not make sense to be a branded hotel.
He calls it the brand calculation contribution penalty. That's what he calls
it. That's the thing that I take issue with it. He comes up with this formula and he calls it the brand contribution penalty.
Yes. Right? I did dismiss that as being trite, but yes, you're absolutely right.
I'm just like, dude. And the funny part is his article actually says that, if you're getting 30% contribution, you're probably way overpaying for the value that the brand brings you, which is undoubtedly true. But if you're getting 70% contribution, you're not paying that much at all. How's that a penalty?
Right.
It's a brand non-contribution penalty, right? If you're paying a lot.
Contribution analysis maybe, or brand contribution comparison. Yeah, penalty.
Right.
I didn't. Like I said, I dismissed it as just I come up with something cute formula, and I didn't really think that the flavor. But yeah, as you say it, I'm like, yeah, that's a piss me off.
And again, I don't care if you're getting 30% contribution from a brand or less, you probably shouldn't be a branded property, right? I'm not. Yes. If you can go get 70% of your rooms filled and not pay brand fees, probably, and I only say probably because there's undoubtedly outliers here where that's not going to be true. but probably shouldn't be paying for a brand in the first place, right? The flip side is, if you're getting 70% contribution for the brand, that's not a penalty that you're paying fees. You're filling 70% of your rooms, for heaven's sakes.
Yep.
The other place I take issue with this, and where I've taken issue with Peter O'Connor before on this stuff, is that, you know, he's comparing, I'll say apples and oranges. And there are some days I feel like he's comparing apples and bowling balls, right? He's comparing apples and, you know, apples and Ford trucks. Like, these things could not be more disparate, in that brands, when they're run well and when they do well by the property, bring a lot more to the table than just contribution, right? They bring standards, they bring training, they bring technology, they bring access to capital, which he talks about, that a lot of banks sometimes won't fund you if you're not a brand, and he thinks that's backwards. He may well be right. It doesn't change the fact that if you don't have the brand, you're not going to get a loan, and if you don't get a loan, you don't have a hotel. So, so the OTAs aren't, we were talking about this last week, the OTAs aren't going to line up and help you get that loan. And if you want to get a hotel, you want to start a hotel, that may be worth the cost of the brand, right? So if we're looking solely at contribution, I think we're comparing apples and things that are not apples, right?
Yes.
With all that said, of course, if you're paying huge fees and you're not getting what the value you need to get out of the brand, you should drop the brand and consider going independent. I work with independent hotels today. I worked with Leading for a long time, which was all independent hotels. I'm entirely in favor of independent properties where it makes sense to, and also entirely in favor of, you know, being branded where it makes sense to. And referring to the fact that you get contribution as a penalty just is really, really, you know, misstating the fact.
I'm glad Robert's coming back at just this time, because I'm going to like to ask you, Mr. Robert, if you can hear me.
I can. So you can ask me a question what you were talking about, which I didn't hear. That's fair. Good.
I was why I think Peter O'Connor is wrong and has an axe to grind.
Wait, why? What is wrong?
Actually, mine's not this question. It has something to do with what we're talking about, but it doesn't have to be related to why you can answer this. Has anybody done a study on the long-term value impacts of the demands of a brand relationship over the cost savings that it brings to the table for ancillary, FF&E replacement, equipment, perpetual costs, and so forth, where there's a cycle, just say, over the 10-year span that a normal lifetime contract or a contract with a brand has compared to an independent hotel? Yeah, true. I am shortening up on the limiteds. So 20 years, you know, for all of the things that are beneficial to, financing, as we just talked about, the perpetual credit lines that are associated with them, the trainability and the costs associated with all those ancillary things, plus, you know, the demands that brand gives you for FF&E requirements and brand standard builds compared to independent's ability to tolerate a little bit longer life cycles. All that. Has anybody done a comparison analysis to say at the end of the day, brand?
So I have, actually.
That's my question.
And actually, it was for an independent hotel. We did a study to determine whether or not it made sense to take on a flag, and we determined in their specific case it did not. So I want to be, as I've started at the beginning of my rant, this is not let me defend the brands. If you shouldn't be branded, you shouldn't be branded. And we did this as a study for a client and determined being a brand for them, it wasn't gonna cost them a ton relative to what their other costs were going to be. It also wasn't going to gain them anything other than what they were going to gain as an independent, right? It was at best, the best case scenario was it was break even. The worst case scenario was it was going to cost them a bit more. And we decided the right thing to do was stay independent for that property. Now, have I done that? Have I done that systemically? Right. It varies by market. There's a lot of reasons different things come into play there. Now have I done that systemically across, markets or properties or chain scales or things like that? No, definitely not.
You bring up a good point, though.
Which brand?
And which brand? Oh, for sure.
Right. That's a factor. Right. I think that's a takeaway. I think that's a takeaway in points is that you can't standardize this evaluation process in any factor component. The scale that you're comparing yourself to is to the brand you're going to engage with, to the product location itself, to the comp set that it represents. There's a lot of immediate variables that you could take a wrong path on by trying to homogenize your evaluation process.
And that's where I take issue with Peter O'Connor's article and, frankly, his entire series of articles on this topic. Right, Robert? Just so you're aware, that I said I have two problems with this. One is the fact that he calls this formula he came up with the brand contribution penalty, which certainly makes it sound like contribution is a bad thing, right? Yep. Second, the fact that he, as he rightly points out, if you're 30% contribution, you're probably overpaying for a brand, which is undoubtedly true. Right. And 70% contribution, you're not overpaying for the brand. It's actually quite low in terms of fees, yet he still calls it a brand contribution penalty. If that's not a skewed perspective, I do not know what is. And then the third problem I have with it is the fact that, as I was saying before, sorry for repeating myself, but this is just to catch you up, that he's comparing apples and oranges here in that the brand often, not always, but often brings value beyond just contribution. And so, you cannot look at this solely as a heads and beds numbers. If they're providing 50% contribution, but also they get you access to financing, they get you, discounted purchasing, they get you training for your staff and yada, 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 access to technology. Lower OTA fees, et cetera.
Big one, right?
Yeah. Right. Then that may in fact be well worth paying if in fact it's a good brand for your property, for your market, etc. All the other things being true. Right. So this is not let's defend the brands. It's let's really do a true analysis of what's going on here, and instead of OTAs are cheap and everyone should use them and brands are overpriced and they should die in a fire, which seems to be the tenor of his his series of articles.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
No, knowing Peter, I don't know if he was thinking quite that far, but I think the way he could have phrased it, which might have been a little bit better, the way I would have phrased it would have been that these brand relationships wind up being long-term kind of fixed cost relationships, right? So you sign up, and the average brand cost in the U.S., at least the last HVS study I saw, was about 12%, right, of your room revenue. Some of them, like Hilton Garden Inns, I believe, were leading at around 15 or something like that. But so that's a good chunk of change.
Oh yeah.
The OTAs, as I always say, are quote risk-free. I mean, if you look at very superficial, you only risk-free. Right, exactly. Yeah, you all of these you have to peel back the onion a little bit on. Right. But hypothetically, you only pay on delivered business. You don't have to pay up front. It only all that reduces your risk radically. And what do you wind up having to pay? Maybe it averages out 15 the way that Peter says, because the major groups are down in the 12 11ish range, and the other guys are up in the 18ish range. So you can wind up doing that. The problem is if you have that brand and everything keeps coming from the OTA and the brand doesn't move the needle, right, then you've got a problem. Right, that's the big. If the brand doesn't perform, Now here's the issue, though, that the finance guys, because they're looking at this, and if it's a full service hotel, a large full service, 300 room hotel or something like that, that's going to take a couple years of planning, and you got to get the financing, and you got to get the site, and go, get it in the ground, and get things built and opened. But they don't know all those factors back then. Right. So they go, we're going to give you this money. If you can put a brand in there, that's going to make us feel a lot more comfortable, that it's going to be okay, that there are certain standards that you as an investor are going to have to abide by, or you as an owner have to abide by. So that's going to kind of assure that you're doing these things, and maybe that protects our investment a little bit better. So that's all for very good reasons. The reality winds up being, now, what's the density of these brands? Can that brand generate enough raw demand for your property, incremental demand of just you opening the doors and being there
And that's one of the issues.
At the exact same price point, all other things being equal, right? Which is
right.
That's the interesting.
Entirely fair.
And that's the interesting analysis, which I don't think anybody's really done on a macro basis.
Not that I've seen. No.
Maybe it does come out where some brands get paid less than other brands, right? Because theoretically they bring more, the brands have some of these comparisons, but still.
The dirty little secret about brands and brand market and brand saturation is that there is favored children, and favored children are based on market value to the brand. And this is a contention I've had for many years with brands.
Yeah, of course.
Is that brand provide for the hotel up to the point that its value proposition is to the benefit of the brand.
Right.
Then below that level, the hotel needs to assume its own value proposition of what it means to itself, as to itself and its location, its destination, what have you. And brands do not do that. They commoditize their own inventory to that market.
Well, actually, I'm going to jump in there for 1 second, Lauren. And I know I talked a lot on this one, and I want you to say what you want to say. But I agree with commoditize on one level, and I disagree on another level. The point of a brand is consistency. So it shouldn't be commoditized. It should be consistent. Right.
Well, yeah.
Now, I do agree. A lot of brands are not doing a good job of offering consistent and differentiated, right, for each brand.
That's the big challenge for these brands is consistent.
That is a big challenge.
That's
the commodity. A Hilton Garden Inn should be distinct from a Hampton Inn. Mm-hmm. It also should be consistent from Hilton Garden Inn to Hilton Garden Inn to Hilton Garden Inn. So it shouldn't be commoditized in that regard. I'm just pushing back on that word choice for 1 second.
But I will justify my use. I will justify my use of the term in this particular sense. The brands have also allowed for ownership to cluster their ownership of brand layers. So you can have a cluster of Courtyard, Residence Inn, and Full Flag, or mixtures thereof. Yep. Now, in
you
the
can
real
put them
world,
in the same building today.
Right.
Oh,
yeah,
which I think is a terrible thing to do from a brand perspective.
Oh no, there's the first triple. I should have put this in. Somebody did 3 properties in a single building. It's like the first.
It's in New York.
Yeah,
it's in New York.
Yeah. Anyway, nonetheless, sorry, Lauren, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
Go ahead.
And I actually experienced when I went to Dallas. It was a fair amount in Spring Hill. But anyway, so what I'm trying to say in the commoditization validation of using that term is, in the real world of marketing, there is only a limited amount of traffic based on the value proposition that you can offer, keyword, a value, whatever it may be. You can't all be the best hotel next to the airport. But you have 3 hotels geographically that are located closest to the airport. So somebody has to decide which of those hotels is going to be closest to the airport versus free breakfast closest to the airport versus larger rooms closer to the airport. What you end up having is that each hotel has a small slice of identification that has allowed them, not by prioritization, but by out of preference. And those decisions get made based on how much traffic could be generated based on how it's engaged with when people go to what you're presenting using those terms. Are they engaged? And like you say, you're the closest airport hotel. I'm showing you my Full Flag because I want you to stay there because it has more amenities, quality of product, whatever you want to call it, room design, what have you. But I'm not going to show you my Courtyard, even though legitimately they're at the same address. Okay.
Right.
So there is this commoditization use of saying, you know what, we'll free sell these limited rooms easier as backup volume inventory. We'll segment them out to different segments of business interest, whatever. But our market value is featured on what we think has the most tangible competitive value to our other once we're competing market.
Well, that's the point of differentiation, right? I mean, that's the point of differentiation.
Right. So in my mind, the use of commoditization is that I am standardizing it as inventory, not as what it is by brand, flag, flavor, whatever, because I've lost its uniqueness because it's sitting on the same plot of land. It's sitting in the same parking lot. And for most of my people, they're walking over to the Residence Inn to get the free breakfast anyway. So, it's...
Agreed.
In those moments, I use the term legit. I do completely
agree with that, by the way. Completely agree with that.
It's an issue for that. And then now when you've created this blending of like with Marriott and Starwood and so forth, you have this frenemy relationship that now I bought a franchise that was supposed to have a footprint, and now I have to share my data, my marketing, and my keywords with literally my previous competitor across the street, geographically similar in product offering and everything else. But I now have to share. Now I have to slice that closest best breakfast to the airport keyword between one of us now, because now we're supposed to be collaborating.
Right.
But from the brand perspective, you're now competing with yourself instead of a competitor, right? So the bottom line is that the 3 constituencies generally in the hotel industry, even for a single property. You have the owner. They have certain revenue streams and a business model which drives their business. You have a third-party management company. They have their revenue streams and their business model, and you have the brand. Those are three relatively very different businesses of how they work, all hypothetically really with the goal of making that single property perform at its optimum, which is what the owner would certainly want to happen. Well, not necessarily. That's probably, priority number one is to make sure your management company is successful, and then number two, that property. Or maybe down the list, as Lauren was saying, with the favored children versus the other one. And yes, you're going to be your objectives are going to be somewhat, secondary to the overall brand, unfortunately. But that's how business works on these things. You can't. Right. Tim Peters' choice isn't going to make Hilton change hey, we should have kitchens in all the, whatever, the Hampton Inns now, right?
Right. Right. And if I were an investor and I was looking at, do I want to be a Delta, or do I want to be a Marriott, or do I want to be a Sheraton, or do I want to be a Renaissance, or do I want to be a Westin? I agree with you that I don't think Marriott to date has done a good enough job differentiating those brands. To be fair to Marriott, they also owned most of those brands except for about a year. So I think we need to give them a little time to pull some of those apart and differentiate them. But
but that's really hard to do.
But I think it's incredibly hard to do. I think it's incredibly important to do. Otherwise, it's a commodity product. I mean, may as well all just carry a Marriott flag. But just let me finish this point for 1 second, and then I'll shut up for a minute. I swear. Is a property in that chain scale, I think, also could just as easily be an independent and build a truly differentiated offering for its customers, so long as they can get access to capital to finance the project in the first place, right? So I think that's something Marriott's going to have to do, or else they're going to lose some of those contracts to people who say, you know what, I just assume be an autograph collection, or I'll be a tribute portfolio, or I'll be completely independently flagged and be a preferred property, or be something, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's something Marriott, I don't know this. I've not talked to anybody at Marriott, but I'd be stunned if they're not doing this, because they're going to have to, or else they're going to have trouble competing for, investor dollars. Right.
Well, and I certainly think when you start cleaning up those brands and rationalizing them, right, in the context that maybe they were fine with Starwood, but now you've got 30 brands of Marriott, and you've got all these concentrations of properties.
Oh, we lost Robert.
You lost me again?
No.
You lost me.
I see you.
Lost him? Oh, okay.
No.
I don't know. But
no, you're good.
Okay. But the challenge is, once you start changing those, you go, hey, we're going to have a big property improvement program, right? We're going to start moving these guys up, or these guys, we're going to start. All of a sudden, all those owners go, whoa, wait a second. Now I'm getting courted by, brand X over here. And it starts giving them opportunities. So they don't want to disrupt. It's the last thing Marriott wants to do is to have acquired Starwood, and then in retrospect going, oh, they lost 5 or 10% of their inventory by merging these two together. They didn't get this, this 1 + 1 = 3. It was less than that, right?
Right. 1 + 1 = 1.8.
That's a bad situation. Right. So so that is really, really tricky to do. Oh, Lauren was incorrect. This does not happen very often. Okay, so we should timestamp this. This may be another sign of the apocalypse coming. I don't know.
Oh, my God.
The triple branded hotel is a Hilton, and it is at Chicago's McCormick Place.
No, there's another one in New York it's a Courtyard, Fairfield, Spring Hill or something. It's on just by the park. It's by the park.
Okay.
Well, and by the way, I think we're all saying the same. I think we're all saying the same thing. Is that's not great from a brand perspective,
right? No. Oh, well, and this one it's interesting because it's a 23-story hotel, 184 Hilton Garden Inn rooms, right? So that's 184 courtyard rooms. Oh, I'm sorry. 187 Hampton Inn rooms. I mean Fairfield. Wait, which?
Yeah.
Thing.
Right.
And 95 home two suites. I mean Residence Inns, right? Wait,
Right.
which is this? So
Right.
now, aside from having the kitchens, right, in the home two units, I would argue that, yeah, a number of years, 20, 30 years ago, that could have been a property with moderate, superior, and deluxe rooms or something.
Right.
The corner rooms, things like that, right? And
Right.
and now they're completely different brands. But yeah, that's a challenge. There's an Element Aloft combo property here in Dallas near Love Field, and I was having a conversation with the general manager saying, okay, well, this is interesting. You've got the long-term stay over here, and the loft's kind of cool, and has the bar. And I mean, literally, you walk in the door, you turn right. For some reason, they had a front desk on one side and a front desk on the other. It's like, no, you have one, and you split them up. You can be more efficient than this.
Right.
But I basically asked the GM. They said, oh no, what I'd do is stay in the Element and then hang out in the loft. That's actually the best way to stay at this property. Because the price difference wasn't that much more with the Element, and you kind of got the best of both worlds.
Going back to one thing Tim said, I just want to add I do have hope on one thing with this, and that is with the progressive use of AI and really finding some unique aspects of discoverability as to the engagement that people have with these products, that there will be ways that we humans don't understand some of the variances of how we interpret some of the usage of these products. Like even if I walk into one of these multiplicity brand locations where, take a left if you're going to Fairmont, take a right if you're going, I'm still going to talk differently about my experience depending upon which way I landed. And there is, to even these clustered hotels around the same parking lot owned by the same people competing with somebody across the street that they now have to be frenemies with, there is nuances of distinction that we engage with in our social platforms, we engage with in our dialogue and so forth, that will hopefully create unique, as we automate more the mechanics of our advertising to AI, that will allow us an opportunity to make some distinction. It's a hope. I'm not saying it's going to happen.
No, here's why I disagree. I disagree. If you have to rely upon better than human intelligence to explain to people why they should buy your product, you're not doing a good job of explaining why people should buy your product.
I am not disagreeing with you on that in any stretch.
I mean, I'm a very, very good friend of mine, a guy by the name of Mike Moran, has the best line I've ever heard about differentiation. Differentiation is not just a difference, but it's the thing that is so different that the people who want you would have to be an idiot to not buy from you, right? A truly differentiated product, everybody wants who's the right customer for that product. It's not hard. You don't need artificial intelligence for people to understand, oh yeah, that's something I actually would like.
Right.
I don't. Again, I agree with you on that. This is a solution to a bad problem.
I like Diet Coke. I don't like Diet Pepsi.
Right.
They're both brown carbonated fizzy drinks in a bottle. One of them tastes different than the other one, and I know which one I like, and that doesn't take any AI. We ought to be able to do the same thing with our hotel product.
That's right.
Right, but I'll add to this one other thing. Is like I don't disagree with you in any capacity. That obviously this is a problem that should be solved without the negative AI. But I think there's just too much going on that it may not be a hope for. But I'll defer to something, an interesting campaign right now. LL Bean. Have you seen the recent campaign about where they're doing the whole sharks versus they're doing the whole West Side Story campaign, and it's like go outside. Okay, really.
I'm shaking my head, by the way, and
I haven't seen it.
I'm gonna. You should finish, but I'll tell you, this is probably a sign that LL Bean does a good job. I don't like going outside. I'm not their customer, and I never see this. Right? No, I'm dead serious about this.
No, I know what you're saying.
You don't get this kind of pallor when you spend a lot of time in the sun. Is all I'm saying, right? But I'm not their customer. It's okay, right? Like that's totally fine. And that's a differentiated product. Who are they selling to? People who like to be outside when it's not, 78 degrees and sunny, right?
With a light breeze.
With a very, very, very light breeze, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. That's a good sign that they're doing a good job of differentiating their offering from, REI or North Face or whomever else,
Yeah, they're doing it from the idea of be an outsider, and then what it is they do the West Side Story where all these people that are out playing not flag football, but they're taking their flannel shirts, red flannels versus blue flannels, wrapping around their waist, and they're playing flag football with the flannels, and they're playing the shark music in the background, and they're playing the football game. It's like be an outsider, and it's a neat little hey, this is a creative way of saying we're just not an outdoor company that you're comparing us to Dick's or to Bass Pro. We're different. We build what we sell mentality kind of thing.
Right.
And I like that, and I have hopes.
Differentiation.
To your point, that's the hope I have about human ingenuity, that humans are going to rethink the fact that there's a way of communicating that is impressively interesting without it being blindly obvious.
Well, and to bring it full circle back to the Peter O'Connor thing, I think if you look at some of the really great independent hotels, you look at the Iron Horse or the Pfister in Milwaukee, those are two very different takes on what it means to be a hotel in Milwaukee. You got obviously Klein of Mine, the Wentworth Mansion versus the King's Courtyard Inn versus the John Rutledge House Inn in Charleston, South Carolina. You think of another Klein of Mine, the hotel at Kirkwood Center in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, right? Which is this really cool, hip, urban, trendy place sitting in the middle of a cornfield. They didn't go out of their way to say, let's be like every other box rooms out there. We're going to be a cool, chic place, even though we're by a freeway, by the airport, and in the middle of a cornfield, because that's actually something people will genuinely like.
When they travel from out of town.
Correct. Yeah. Right. Exactly. And they do very well for themselves, and because it is a truly differentiated experience. And that's what you have to do, right? Kimpton did a great job of it for a long time. And I would hope continues to do so under IHG, right? Omni does a really good job of it. Who else? W for a time did a very good job of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So, I mean, you can do it. Are Hampton and Fairfield? Sorry. Bad example. Because they're two different.
Hampton and Hilton Garden Inn.
Hampton and Hilton Garden Inn, rather. Excuse me. Right. Are they doing a great job of it?
Yeah. Well, and actually to correct, I believe Nashville has, I don't know if this is the first one, but the Marriott one they did in Nashville is a Spring Hill Suites, a Residence Inn, and an AC hotel. All combined. So 407 some rooms. What's the breakdown? 125 room Spring Hill Suites, 136 room Residence Inn, and 209 room AC. And AC is a pretty hot brand, right? That's the cool,
Actually, Marriott has done a good job of this. This surprised me. This came out of nowhere. I may have told the story a couple of weeks ago, but Marriott's done a good job with Moxie as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, AC and Moxie. But again, those were acquisitions, right? They acquired those. Now they've, those are little European brands that they've now kind of taken out. But this thing also has 9,000 square feet of meeting space. I think 11,000 square feet of retail space, 6 F&B outlets. This is a large 470 room, which used to be a Sheraton. Right, quite frankly, or a Hilton, or a full service Marriott or something. Except now, 130 like Spring Hills. People may not. I don't know if people know the difference between a Spring Hill and a Residence Inn. Spring Hills don't have kitchens.
Candidly, I don't. I've never. I haven't stayed in a Residence Inn in a long time, and I've never stayed in a Spring Hill, so I don't know the difference between them.
Yeah. But they don't have kitchenettes. They don't have.
Spring Hills are just they're more like an Embassy Suites where it's kind of the bay and a half type, larger, larger unit, but not no kitchen, right? Got it. But with that, you kind of go, well, okay, I've got the AC rooms, which are your standard rooms, hypothetically. You've got you got 209 of those. You've got 125 room more deluxe rooms, which are the Spring Hill rooms, and then you got 136 with kitchens, right? And that's and that's about it. So that I look at as being kind of the new, and they say everybody, regardless of the brand, gets to use all the facilities. There's no separation or anything like that. I think that is kind of the new, especially with these multi-branded properties.
Yeah.
This is the future for what a full service hotel looks like. And for that owner, that may be a good combination, because they go, yeah, we want kind of this, and we realize, like in the situation with the Element and a loft property, they can look at it and go, yeah, we've got these kind of nicer rooms, we can kind of get a nice ADR off of these, but we also have a price point over here, right, on the loft ones or whatever, and we can charge less for those. So it may give them more flexibility, but again,
it's troubling from a brand perspective.
From a pure brand macro perspective, you go, Hilton goes, yeah, we got all through, we're fine, right? We're good. They're all in there. But pure, what is really the value of a Spring Hill versus an AC versus a residence? And I would say in this Nashville case, the AC may be making the residence in the Spring Hill a little bit cooler and more fun, right? Well, sort of thing. And
and also too, from the real world of when ownerships were looking at expansion of product, that they invested into one particular footprint with a particular brand, and they were sold the opportunity of thinking they could tier themselves within the same market they're already in. They've already invested in by saying, all right, you have this courtyard. Here's your tier level. Here's your footprint. Now, residents in, hey, you got that empty lot space next door, same parking lot, right? You bought that whole area. So if you residents in here, here's your new tier that you can cross sell with our brand contribution. We're going to drive business at those two tier levels for you at that footprint. We're going to do this. And so it's ownerships naturally sold into you bought one, like I bought an Apple, I'm going to stay with Apple products. They bought a brand in there. They have the relationship. And the brands hold hostage the fact that they don't necessarily will let you buy into a next gen product until you prove your value proposition as a franchisor that you're successful with the one you got. So
I don't relationship. Oh yeah, but Lauren, I know we're probably coming at this from different perspectives. I think calling that hold hostage is inappropriate. And the reason I say that is their job is to make sure the brand is well represented. Right? I mean,
it's Stockholm syndrome anyway.
If they don't know you're going to be a good brand partner, should you be able to buy into the best brands if you haven't demonstrated you know how to run a hotel?
Oh, no, that wasn't the hostage part. The hostage part I'm talking about is they're not going to let you do another cross sell. They're not going to let you build a competitor brand next to yours.
No.
Why should they?
Right.
Okay.
Why should they?
Right.
It's
not
brand.
Not letting you and discouraging you are two different things.
We have an exclusive contract.
Right.
If it's at a different tier.
I could also work for Intercontinental or Preferred.
I own a courtyard. I own a courtyard in the location, and I came into a shitload of money, excuse the French, and I want to build a full flag Hilton.
No.
Next to me.
You can build a full flag Marriott.
You can build a full flag Marriott.
But I want Hilton.
Well, depending. Wait, did you acquire a site next to it or something, or did you tear something?
I bought a whole big piece of land, and it's sitting right next to my courtyard.
Depends on how your contract was written, maybe.
Yeah,
but it probably has a clause that you aren't going to do something that's a competitor right adjacent or something like that.
But
you're making decisions for me that I
it's not hostage.
No, you signed a contract.
You agreed to that. If you didn't want to do that, if you didn't want to do that, you might have been able to sign something and said you were going to go be a Cambria or something like that.
Correct.
And maybe they would let you do that or something like that. Maybe. And I'm not saying Choice would or wouldn't. And I don't know. I don't think Wyndham would. Maybe.
The nice part is
I actually don't know the answer to that, honestly.
Yeah.
I have 31 flavors of Marriott to choose from, so I could build a Ritz-Carlton if I want.
But Marriott's not going to do that. They are not going to do that. They don't have to.
Let me come at it from a different perspective, right? Starbucks has an excellent brand. Whether you like the coffee or don't like the coffee is beside the point. They have an excellent brand, right? They do have franchise properties. They don't have, it's not the vast majority of their properties, but it's certainly a large scale. It's a healthy chunk of their properties.
Right.
They tend to work with single franchisees for many units, right? You're not a franchisee for a Starbucks. You're a franchisee for all the Starbucks in New Jersey or wherever it happens to be, right? All the franchised ones in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
You cannot also open a Dunkin' Donuts right next door. Nobody's going to say that's inappropriate. You're entering a relationship with this brand to say we are both working together for the best interest of both of us.
Now, you just made my argument on the previous. You just backed up on the previous comment about mutual exclusivity and commoditization of inventory, because what you're telling me is, okay, you're right. I can't sell coffee to coffee. But if I want to build a full flag hotel to a limited service hotel, you're saying they're the same thing. But I'm commoditized in my market space for the limited service.
No.
You kind of backtracked on the previous.
No, you're putting words in my mouth that I never said, Lauren. You're not remotely. You're not remotely. Because if I decide I'm going to open a Jiffy Lube on the property next door, Starbucks couldn't possibly care less, right? But that's not the same thing. The difference between a Starbucks and a Jiffy Lube is not.
I want to open a Jamba Juice.
Between a Hilton and a
I want to do a Jamba Juice. I want to do a Jamba Juice.
I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that.
My point is this: you just said hotel room is a hotel room, and yet it's between full service and limited service. You just said hotel room is a hotel room.
Don't say I just said when I didn't just say. What I'm saying is, right, and I'm trying to use an analogy, so let's be very clear about this, right? What I'm trying to say is, I'm saying beverages are beverages and hotel rooms are hotel rooms. I'm saying, beverages are not car repair. And a hotel room is not car repair just because it's a higher chain scale than a different hotel room, right?
Yeah.
So I can't put a soda machine at my Jiffy Lube.
Well, it's interesting.
That's a silly argument.
There may be.
Come on, you can.
I haven't seen a Starbucks franchise agreement, but there are probably some some framing of what your territory is, and some sort of some form of non-compete clause in there, right? So so you can't do a Seattle's Best Coffee and a Pete's and a whatever right around them, right? That's obviously clear. Jamba Juice, maybe they draw the line at beverage. Maybe. What about a Shake Shack? Well, it says Shake, but they're selling burger. You have maybe a La Madeleine is fine, or a Five Guys is fine. But hard to say, and I think that winds up.
I'm not trying to, it's fun being protagonist because if Zed isn't here, somebody's got to play that role a little bit. But what for me is, what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, a hotel room is a hotel room in all concept because of product similarity. And how we sell the hotel room is distinctly different as to the context of what we perceive the value proposition of that product is. And yet you may say classification of beverage. I can't do beverage if I already have a beverage stand like a Starbucks. And I'm saying the same thing, that there is this relationship that exists with brands that are exclusive as to your range of flexibility.
But that's in the contract. I mean, then don't sign that contract if you know that. Lauren, again, if you work for, let's take this out of the realm of hotels entirely. If you work for IBM, you cannot also work for Hewlett Packard. You can't, right? Right. You've entered a relationship with them.
You might not be able to work with them for 5 years after you leave IBM.
I have this with clients that I work with today. I have contracts where I work with a group of hotels in a given market, and part of the deal is I'm not going to work with other hotels in the given market.
Oh, but that's Tim. That's because you have ethics. You could really you probably can't double your earnings, but you could probably do that 1.5, 1.4 sort of thing.
Right. I mean, this is the kind of thing of are you committing to the company and the brand, or are you not? And if you're not, that's okay.
And that really is the point I'm trying to make.
Contract.
Right. They want
That's the point I'm trying to make, that when you're signing on the dotted line for your first expression of collaboration, there is a very large signing on the dotted line you're creating that you need to understand the relationship you're forging. Because it isn't just I'm starting my first hotel and then I'll have a choice to do what I want to do next. No, you're choosing a lifelong relationship on this, or 20-year relationship at least, on what this means to be this relationship. That's probably the strongest point I can make to it. Regardless of what relationships you want to build past that point, it'll always be symbiotically tied to them.
Right, but let's think about this, right? If you're building a new property, I pulled up some data from HVS. What's the average cost per key? This is data as of 2017. The average cost per key on a budget hotel is $95,000 per room, right?
Yep.
The average cost per key on a luxury hotel is about $500,000.
Yeah.
You know, if you're talking about a 75-room property as a budget hotel, you're talking an investment of $7+ million.
Right.
If you're not thinking long and hard about where you want to be 5, 10, 15 years down the road when you're pulling out that $7.5 million in the first place, I wouldn't sign the contract in the first place.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to be thinking about where are you going to be as you go forward, not just I'm going to open a hotel and see how it goes. Like that's a real recipe for failure.
And that's what I'm also saying too, is that you have to look at the fact that now you just signed a contract 5 years ago with Marriott before they even started talking to Starwood, and now you're sitting across the street from who you knew was there as your competitor, that now is in collaboration with limited space.
That's absolutely a fair. That's absolutely a fair point.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because something changed. Something changed with the brand relationships, which in many cases may wind up possibly violating. Again, a lot of these don't say that Marriott can't go acquire Starwood because of the hotel in Nashville is going to have some sort of conflict, right?
Or Gaylord or something.
Right? Yeah, or something like that. But the situation is, that winds up having to get worked out because you go, wait a second, that's now infringing on this market territory and this thing. I was the guy who had this, and now what? We've got to solve this.
I've been gone from Wyndham that I'm sure I can say this without violating any confidences, especially because it's nothing specific. But I can tell you, every time when I was there that we bought a brand, we lost some franchisees from the prior brand and the occasional existing brands, either because contractually they were allowed to, or because they made enough of a stink and wanted to sue us and all this other kind of stuff that it was just easier to buy them out of the, to let them buy out of the contract or things along those.
And the ones who are trying to push the contract to go open a choice property and a Marriott property, and then trying to get around who weren't totally with the program, right? They got pushed out.
And you also knew who was in the dock and the pipeline for people that wanted product in market, and you giving up these people that were fighting you tooth and nail. It was nicer to join a family that wanted to be a participant.
Absolutely.
Exactly right. And I'm sure that happens in every case. Yes. And I'm sure there's somebody who was a Marriott, who had a Starwood across the street. Marriott bought them, and they said, great, we're going to take our ball and go home, and we're going to go be an independent, or we're going to go be a Hilton, or we're going to, I'm sure that happened.
Or they said, wait a second, you can have your name because you had this. You can become an autograph. Your fees are going to go to this.
Absolutely.
And I will say this. And I will say this, just from a perspective of consulting and what we do and so forth, is I've had instances of working with those who have stepped away from their brand relationships and those who have redefined their brand relationships with others. And when it comes to redefining them in the market, it is, honest to gosh, like shooting fish in a barrel on their comp set, because their comp set is so brand based and they're so segmented and so sliced and they're so non-defined and so generically handled that literally you can steal business from everybody in your market around you if you have the flexibility to do so.
Yes, but I won't. Normally, I mention the brand. I won't mention the brand in this case because it was pretty heinous. A hotel at JFK Airport, taking the thing independent, and what happened? That major brand went and, in fairness to them, they advised all of their customers who had bookings of that property, including all the group bookings, everything. Yeah. They are no longer going to be part of the family. They're gone. Without a lot of information of what they're doing, right? No information on they're going to do this or do that, and moved it all to neighboring properties. And they're liable, and they, under the terms of the agreement, were able to do that because they're a shared customer, right? And they have an obligation, and their lawyer will come in and go, wait a second, they booked this as doesn't matter. This particular brand, that's what they're expecting. It's not that anymore. We've got to let them know. Now, they may stay, they may not care, but if they do.
To me, that's nothing more than throwing a gauntlet down saying, game on, dude. I'll take them right the frick back, and I know exactly what they're paying and what they got and where they're contacted, and I'll have them back in my door and out of yours. And on top of it, I'm going to steal some of your shit just to make you pissed off.
That's if you have that whole list and you're planned in advance, and
Yes.
you've got the whole list of all your customers who are coming, you have all their phone numbers and email addresses, which doesn't always happen with
It's
no
not,
TA.
I don't even have to be that detailed. I only have to know the generalities of whom you were even engaged with. What business?
Well, in this one, they're picking off your entire forward book, including all the groups.
Oh, no. I know what they did. I'm saying what information was still residual that I need to just point a compass at. I mean, if you want to talk about GoFetch, if you came to me and said, look, I just deflagged and they ripped everything out of me and they put it over to my now competitor across the street because I didn't want to play ball with them, I say, how much information do you still have hanging around? I mean, well, I don't know anything. I just remember the company name. No problem. We'll get them back. Because there's no way in the world, because you at least know what you were engaged with at some level of cost or some level of expected business, and getting them back, oh, good Lord. It is one of the easiest. Competitive set stealing is one of the easiest things in the world to do.
I'm going to quote The Godfather right here. It's not business. It's not personal. It's not personal.
It is, absolutely. and it's leveraging your capability to go do that, because, again, you can't do that before you've notified them. Right? You can't start saying we aren't going to be part of this and do it. That's a no-no. The second you pull that trigger, they may have a national sales office network, depending on your property, who have people in those locations. And if they are organized with us, and let's just say a lot of these major hotel groups have seen this before and we were talking about contingency plans for if things go wrong. They have processes for this, which they can kick in very rapidly and say, let's just get out immediately. Let's go through the original booking, whatever, all this referral business. Let's work with the OTAs. We need to get notifications out to here, and you're outgunned, right? It happens fast, and you don't have time to go do all that stuff. And all of a sudden, your whole backlog of business, which you were banking on so you could go do your renovations and all that cash flow is dropped.
I'm going to mediate this. But also I'm going to mediate this by taking both sides for a second, though leaning towards Lauren in this specific case.
Because, what?
Well, no. Robert, first of all, I know.
Remember, talk about violating agreements. We had the agreement. We always. You can't.
What did George Costanza say to the birds? We had a deal.
I said you could agree with Ed. You can agree with Stuart, but you cannot agree with Lauren.
Printed on. That contract's not worth the paper it's printed on. The fact of the matter is, I mean, I first of all, everything you just said is correct, Robert. The flip side is, if you're going to go independent and you're not prepared to do that and fight for every piece of business in the first place and aren't putting the right resources in place to do that, then you shouldn't be independent, because you're going to struggle a lot because you're going to get outgunned by the big guys. Right?
And I think
you need to have a good sales team. You need to have a good marketing team. You need to have good processes. It doesn't mean I've said this many times on the show. I'm a big fan of Moneyball. It doesn't mean you have to go head to head resource for resource. It means you have to invest wisely in the right resources and in the places where you can actually compete effectively to fill your rooms at a lower cost. Right. You can absolutely do that. And not only can you must.
Right. Yeah.
And to that end, to Tim's point as well, is that if you even have the hint thinking that this is a decision to be considered, it just doesn't happen into a bubble, and all of a sudden the property walks in going, my screen's dead and the computers have been yanked out and I got how am I supposed? I mean, it doesn't happen that way so quickly, but in the sense of you hit the soft spots. You hit the company's soft spots. It's like, okay, if we're going to do this, we're first going to extract as much data and relevance and understanding as we have, so that we have some reference point of what it is that's going to cost us to make this decision.
Right.
And then once you start looking at that and logistically and deciding it, what is it going to do to replace what we're going to lose? How do we retain what we already know? You go through this diligence of understanding it. And then for me, one of the things I love, and have this in more than one instance, go for the jugular of where you're going to be able to finally steal the business that was always surrendered up to the people that always got it before you, because now you don't have to play nice with them anymore. And then you go for them. And that's where that's when you show the value proposition of stepping away from them. We get to shoot for this stuff, because no longer do we have to just bow to the person that's in market that is the leader. We get to fight for this stuff now.
Right.
And that makes it kind of fun. But you got to want to do it. It's work. It ain't no.
I think my point is you cannot go into it.
Yeah,
you
you're going to
can
be
go
aggressive.
into
It's not a monthly review. It's a daily conversation.
Right.
It's one of those things that we have to be persistently engaged with. You guys got to be hungry and aggressive on stuff. Anyway,
and you have to be prepared. I would say be prepared for war, because it will be war.
Oh yeah.
Right? Because if you do that, you're leaving. It's like leaving the Cosa Nostra, right? It's they do not take kindly to that, and it's like, hey, if you aren't doing this, fine. Yeah.
Right.
Good luck. Best of luck with you, and we're going to go take our toys and go home too. Right.
I want to bring up. We did have an article about MetaSearch and one about Cody that I want to make sure we throw in. But I want to bring a question to both of you, whether you looked at something real quick. Did you see the current listing of Google Hotel Finder service contract providers right now? Have you looked at it recently?
No.
The list of people that Google has authorized to be service providers for Google Hotel Finder, that you can actually plug into them and they'll handle the inventory.
Is that still Google Hotel Finder, or is it Google
recently.
Hotel Ads, or is it is that the real name?
I'll put the link over for it. Sorry, I'll put the link into what we're talking about. The provider list has really grown because I told you I applied directly. All right.
Yeah.
I still haven't got an answer. I'm still waiting for my Golden Wonka ticket. But the list has grown, and what's been impressive is there's a lot of service providers that are willing to offer to a single hotel now.
Yeah.
That you're no longer. I mean, at first the lowest I saw was 3 to 5. Hotels, and there had to be inventory count and purchase minimums and all this stuff. And now there's a lot out there that are saying, hey, you're one hotel, we'll hook you up, which I thought was very surprising. The downside, which I wanted to throw into our conversation on the topics, was there is a bad side to Meta right now, which is because everybody can plug in with any inventory availabilities they can, as long as they meet the technical criteria. The price parity problems have just blown up. Oh my God. It's a maelstrom of bullshit. I mean, I'm fighting people I don't even know exist now, and they're pulling rates out of OPAX that, I'm running a 223 rate, and they got a $70 rate, and I'm trying to chase half my time down to figure out what it is. Yeah. Like, where'd that thing come from?
Yeah, but this is the thing I talk about all the time.
On the show like this, man.
I've said this.
He's so eloquent.
I've said this a bunch of times today. It just makes me crazy. Lord, if you're charging $250 and they're charging $70, and it's not clear what the difference is between you, that's the problem.
I'm with you. I'm fighting multiple fronts when I say that. I wish I had the lever that was saying why I'm doing
$70 a night hotel when you're a $250 hotel a night hotel. You should not be charging $250 a night. Period.
Gotcha.
And if you are charging $250 a night, you absolutely should be blowing those $70 a night folks out of the water.
That's my problem. The war has fractured the collaboration of what this means. We talk about the unification of marketing and revenue management. We talk about the unification of symbiotic data and the use of what we're talking about, KPIs, and what we're all supposed to be fighting for and working together on, everything like this. And then I come out and I'm going, hey, guys, you want direct channel contribution percentage to go up. You want channel shift from OTAs and so forth. Ching, what is this? Where the hell is this coming from? Oh, well, that's supposed to be that. No, why don't I have that like they have that in my market strategy? Well, we wanted that to be opaque. Well, guess what? It's not, folks. It's all over HPA right now.
Right.
So shut it off.
Black off.
Absolutely.
Get rid of
Are
these
you saying the $70 a night is for the same inventory? Shut them off.
Yeah.
Well, shut it down.
Technically, it wasn't, because there's a way not to boof the system. It's not a boof. When you do cataloging, it will take the lowest rate opportunity within your catalog. It will pull the lowest rate out of your structure.
Right.
So if you have this lower rate and opaque somewhere in some trashy little inventory, by the ice machine, under construction, whatever, but it's in your catalog pull, then it'll pop up and it'll get pulled by one of these yahoos. And all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah. Now, granted, I still agree with you, Tim. A 250 room should not be for $70. Ain't no way around whatever it is, even if it's a different inventory. But you shouldn't be so despairing that you don't shut those things off and not put them in your catalog to begin with. Make that an opaque offer only to the marketing team. If you want to sell that room, give it to me. I'll go sell the damn thing. Don't put it in your strategy.
That's exactly right.
But it's creating this fractured conversation. I'm all amped up because I'm going to have these conversations this week.
But that's, to me, So it's an operations problem, not a marketing problem. And I mean that more from the standpoint of, it's a sign that something is broken in the operations, that those rates are being publicly allowed to be seen ever in the first place. shut them down.
One of two things. One is that they're being exposed operationally through the res system or channel manager or something is putting out something that's not. The other one though is, or are these being pulled from some sort of third party from somewhere else and being done? Is this
but again,
is this an out of channel? Well, no, where that's actually and again, the 70 versus that, you've got some deep wholesaler who's going to. I don't know. What can happen in that case too is
here's the edge sword to this.
Okay.
Google is allowing this to be made available. If you can show that you can technically maintain inventory and inventory ping and availability and so forth, that's consistent tech specs that they have, okay? Yeah. Then you can offer whatever inventory you want as long as it's legitimized that you can book it.
Right.
So to your point, what the real rabbit hole is you get these one-offs like hotelbestforyou.net.
Yeah, of course.
Right,
okay.
Sure.
And they pull from Agoda, bless their little hearts, an opaque dead rate somewhere off of some dead inventory rate that you have, but it's a bookable rate because of the contract with Agoda. And so they pull it, put it into their catalog, and pitch that up, and get in Hotel Finder, and bing, there they are. They're not going to sell this
Agoda.
So the problem.
That's my thing. That's when you run over to
is,
the revenue team and go, guys, what? 3 strikes, you're out. These guys are blasting you. And here's my rate parity thing. Here's my rate parity thing.
And what you
have to do, I'm like, no,
what you have to do in that scenario, generally, and a lot of too few hotels do it, you need to book that rate, right? So then you can see it and find out where it can, and then you can kind of do the forensics on how did it get there and then shut it off. And then you don't, once you've done that, and it strikes me as odd where people don't do that. They just complain about it. Just book it. You're getting the revenue for you're going to get paid. You're going to lose the margin on it. Maybe.
Right. You're going to lose. You're going to lose.
You're also
$14 or something.
But when you're losing that margin, you're going to be able to push that piece of paper into their face and say, "What the hell are you doing selling these? You are violating our contract." And here's my lawyer here who's going to nail you. You will probably make you that margin back. That's a good investment. But yeah, I mean, that's the only way to deal with it, because in Agoda's case, they may be selling those rooms and saying this is available to some agency, it has to be bundled with air, and it's not, right? Because it isn't getting booked through their platform. Yes. Very, very common wholesaler sort of thing to do, and these guys will go violate that stuff, and Agoda may not know exactly who's doing that, right? Because Agoda may not know that stuff's going out there, because yes, they may be getting paid, but
it's turned into such a bleed of bandwidth because revenue managers don't have the time but need the time.
Sure.
Operations don't have the time but need the ability to find this stuff, to your point, to identify it.
Absolutely.
Marketing people are just becoming aware of the fact of, gee, why aren't we selling shit? We got all this traffic coming to the website. Hey, look, they're going over there because look at what happens on Hotel Finder, for God's sakes.
Right.
I have a question for you, by the way. I have a question for you, right? Just out of curiosity, how much of your room inventory are you selling at that $70 a night through the wholesaler?
It shouldn't be at all. I mean, if
if
it shouldn't be at all, then that's the hotel's problem, right?
You've got, one of two things is true here. Either it's not a lot, in which case shut it down. Who cares? It's not. You're gaining $70 per night, right? Shut it down completely. Don't worry about it. If it is a lot, you're giving away 72% margin, right? If we're talking $250 and you're $70, that's a $180 swing. You can spend a lot less than $180 through other marketing channels and fill that room and pocket more than $70. So shut it down also.
But maybe that $70 maybe that contract was written for whatever for a year, and that $70 also covers the first quarter or the second.
Game planning when that contract ends of how you're going to replace the business.
Exactly.
That's
there is
item
one other
on my visit to some clients next week.
there is also one other ugly scenario in the wholesale world is if somebody is doing, and again, if that block is some sort of prepaid type, who knows what, right? There's some sort of inventory risk, right? If that group has inventory risk, there may be a situation where these guys are coming in going, I committed to whatever, 10 rooms, it doesn't really matter. I committed to 3 rooms a night at whatever dollars. I'm going to get what I can, right? And they just trash it. They go to $70 when easily they could get 150 or 175 or 200.
Finding those too. Yeah.
So, and they're just lazy. They're like, fire sale it, right? And so that's all who's managing all your wholesale.
And to my
price
point, I
relationships.
actually want to revive an old idea that I had done a long time ago, where when we had the '08 downturn, I had so many group blocks that couldn't fill their blocks. So I took the codes and made a website that I called hotel promo codes, and I would secret sell these promo codes out to people to fill the group blocks, and did that as an offering for it. At the time, that was the way to fill the group blocks. What I'm saying with this one is that maybe as a reach out to some of these guys that are the most abusive, we can isolate enough and have enough case study with who it is that's doing it. Maybe we can say, look, here's the deal. Let us try to sell through some of your pre-buys on us, where we do promotional value. So we can control it, package wrap it, so we keep a little opaqueness going on. You get your money, you get your quota, we get our sale.
Yeah,
well, that's what I mean. Yeah. Well, that's what Robert said before. Buy the $70 rate, right?
Yeah.
Pick it back up.
Well, at least find out,
and then go resell it for $150, in a package and make $80 on it. I mean, really, there's a lot of ways you can solve for that problem.
But none of these conversations, our conversation right now is the most advanced conversation I've had about this topic. I'll be honest with you. There's a credit to both of you for that, because this is not something that is being discussed in a way that's not to be solved. We bitch about it. We're certainly bitching about it. But honestly, Tim, your suggestion, Robert's suggestion, first legitimate suggestions I've heard about addressing the issue rather than just bitching about it.
Oh, well, and hey, guess what? In a downturn, guess what? The first group that gets cut in terms of a corporate distribution and marketing thing, all these guys who are doing the competitive rate shopping.
Yep.
I mean, it's brutal. In 2008, 2009, these teams evaporated and retail pricing structures just went to hell. Right. And the hoteliers generally didn't care because they were willing to get business wherever they could. And it didn't matter. Right. And and even before that, there were some major, maybe there is a fourth scenario. You may have a sales department or the people who are managing these rates, who their compensation structure and incentive structure is not aligned with your revenue management structure.
But that's
so
they're
out there.
Problem. You fix that by changing.
They're out there striking deals and doing things and releasing things to go so they can gin up their numbers and get their bonus. Right. It's something that winds up being very negative. I got my 5,000 room nights for the quarter or whatever whatever the metric might be, and and something. Yeah, they wound up getting registered, but nobody's really looking at the rates or the revenue or things like that. So,
Jim, we are 6 minutes past the top of the hour, and unfortunately, I'm 6 minutes past when I need to be doing another thing. So I apologize for.
No,
but I'm going to have to.
Oh, you're going to eat again, aren't you?
Well, given that I have a call at 1:30, and if I don't eat before my 1:30 call, my next meal opportunity is about 5:30 this afternoon. So, and look at me, I'm wasting away to nothing here. I mean, this
we operate on Maslow and an inverted Maslow's needs hierarchy. We are self-actualizing here, and all that other stuff is secondary. I mean,
no. See, I start with the new form of Maslow's hierarchy, where the base level is Wi-Fi. We got Wi-Fi right now. Then we got to get food.
I can test all of Maslow's hierarchy because he did not include alcohol in his discussion process. Only
and living in Texas, everyone knows the base level is having a car with air conditioning. Because if you don't have that, you're out.
You don't exist.
Very true.
Mr. Tim, if people want to know more about you, your podcast, and what it is that you do, how may they find you?
They can find everything they want to know about me at timpeter.com. The podcast at timpeter.com/podcast. And I'm TC Peter on Twitter.
Outstanding. Mr. Tim, I appreciate very much your time for today. And thank you for letting me play protagonist a little bit on some stuff. It was fun because I felt kind of rusty because this week has been just a crunch week for me. And I feel like I've been swinging in shadows for a lot of stuff, as you can tell by rate parity issues and things.
Sure.
And so forth. So for me, it was kind of like I was ready for today's show. I was like, man, I need some mental brain food because I've been fighting too many conversations this week. So I sincerely appreciate the brain food of that.
And
likewise.
And next week, homework before you leave. I'm going to be interviewing Kellen Smith-Kenny, the CMO of Hilton, on stage at Focusrite. So come back with some questions. I've got a whole bunch of questions, but I want to know questions, and I've already teed up that I've already told her I want to ask hard questions.
So ask her if you got a $250 rate, but you're showing up for $70 on a MetaSearch.
I'm being legitimate. That was the best discussion I had about solution processes potential that I've had yet out of it all. Because
Tim and I have solutions for everything.
Exactly.
We have
also
solutions
have
for unasked. Yeah, we have solutions solutions for questions.
You guys built a ship, which means it built a what? Oh yeah.
We also built a shipwreck. That's exactly right.
Exactly.
All right, Robert, where can they find you?
I want to cover the rut row because I know you're really early. Yeah, Tim's chickening out on the rut row.
only because I legitimately have 21 minutes before client call, and
this is another Tim Peter duck and cover situation. So that's fine.
The part I don't want to admit out loud is I've got 21 minutes before a client call and 22 minutes of work to do to prep for that client call.
That's right.
If anything I can say about it all is mentally. Yeah, mental gear shifts.
Did I have a deadline? Was I supposed to do something for them?
Yeah, right. Mr. Tim, thank you very much, sir.
Have a great rest of the day, and I will see you next week, all right?
All right, we'll see you next week. Tim. Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Robert, let's cover the route row because, we did hit the meta well enough that I wanted to cover what we did. To the other end of the articles.
The meta thing I think was interesting, though, because the whole TripAdvisor being out of Google hotel ads and now back in with their reviews back in. I think that says a lot about TripAdvisor, right? They have now moved back a couple years in terms of their strategy. Before they were really going for the heavy book direct, and then they backed off on it, and they had the falling out. I think TripAdvisor legitimately has figured out that they are having problems monetizing those 400 to 500 million unique visitors a month, and they haven't been able to figure out the secret sauce to really make that happen in their ecosystem. And and I think it's kind of the hotels, the book direct versus the use an intermediary, right? It's the same thing. Somebody as big and powerful and as smart as TripAdvisor has probably figured out, it's less expensive to go do this through Google. We can kill ourselves trying to do this, and how far ahead are we?
Their MetaSearch platform is still based on bid price only, not on incrementality.
Right.
So you say 4, you pay 4, where Google will say if it only took you $2.91.
But that's for smart people. The smart people realize that. I don't know. I'm willing to bet TripAdvisor did an analysis of that and figured out the number of hoteliers who don't understand that and are bidding $5 a click on Google because it only comes in at $2.18 or God knows what, right? Or all of a sudden, boom, TripAdvisor just $5. Now that shouldn't last for an extended period of time, but who knows how closely this is getting monitored, and is it really getting broken? I mean, we had a conversation. Boy, it was a number of shows ago about really the detailed reporting that may just be lumped up into a MetaSearch thing and rounded into a $3.84 average, and they don't know, right?
Right. Well, and again, that goes back to, they also shot themselves in the foot with the whoring themselves out as to being able to buy first position, and you just give us enough money, we'll put you anywhere on our site, which to me delegitimized their true original proposition of look at us first before making your travel decisions, to look at what we're pitching you, and and people can pay for the space. So I think that hurt them, and that didn't do them no favors on authenticating the value proposition.
Yep. Yeah, the whole default to the pick list, which I wound up not ever using. Right. And then also too, Facebook's getting better at recommendations. Google is getting phenomenal at freaking recommendations. Oh yeah, yep.
And so
they've got better data than anybody.
They've
got better data, and they've got better data scientists. But besides that,
and it's more tailored to the user than it is to the crowd mentality.
Oh, absolutely.
Here's nameless people giving you recommendations. That you have to still filter through. So I think they're fighting a lot of things that to your point, and they did try Meta on top of Meta a while back, and then they got off of it and tried to be, we're going to be better and bigger. And then now they're back to the, hey, we can margin ourselves off of Google better than we can people drive through ourselves. So, but yes, I agree with you on that. So you want to do the rut row?
Sure, we can do the rut row. The rut row is something that came from the Points guys. Who's if nobody's followed the Points guy.
Oh yeah, Points guy. Yeah,
blogger who really does everything about what you're doing with your airline points, your frequency points, and what the values are, and all sorts of detailed recommendations. Has a lot of sponsorships from credit card companies and things like that wind up funding the site. And very clear with his advertising disclosures, which I've got to give the guy credit for. But Marriott last week announced, this is why Tim chickened out. He didn't want to take on Marriott. And there is a little bit of gray area, so we're not saying Marriott is evil. This is a rut row, which is like, uh-oh, what's going on? This didn't quite work out as planned. So Marriott announced 29 ways to stay game, which was basically they had instant wins where you get 50 reward points, and then some larger prizes, which you get 20,000 points, 4-night stays. And the key was, which I thought this was a very good thing, was basically looking at, hey, they've got 29 brands. So you can wind up when you stay, they have an instant win game where you can win this 50 points. But then they have all these incentives, like if you stay at all 29 brands, which you kind of go, okay, I don't know, maybe some people will start, playing that out. So anyway, they have 83,000 instant win prizes available each day. Now, what's interesting is they then say, and it's a 29-day thing, right? So you come in, they want people to come back to the site 29 times, keep winning playing to win. And you have to answer like 3 questions, which aren't really that easy. You have to do a little bit of research and things like that to go make this happen. So there is some skin in the, there's some effort required. It's not just a click and you get them. What apparently the Points guys figured out is they checked with 200 plus, data points. I guess they went out to their group of hardcore, members, and they found that they only won one prize, right? You could only win a win once situation on this 50 points, which winds up being worth 45 cents. So over the 29-day period, if you went in every day, you could maybe get, from an instant win perspective, aside from getting an entry into the other thing, you could get 45 cents of instant win prizes, which Marriott kind of came back and said, no, you can win up to, hang on. After some back and forth, Marriott told TPG that members have the chance to win only one instant prize per day. But they had in the terms and conditions, if I can read that, they pulled out the actual terms and conditions, which basically said you were limited to one win over 29 days, that you could only be an instant winner one time, which was in the, I see, yes, states that limit one instant win prize per person. So that is not necessarily per day. So I don't know, the experience seems to be that the terms and conditions are really what's ruling this, that there's consistency, and that Marriott's basically giving you a chance to win 45 cents if you go in every day onto our website and answer these questions. So,
wow.
Rut row, not a little bit of a gap there, which I don't see why Marriott wouldn't just give out 50. If somebody comes to your site 29 times and answers these little questions about each of the brands, right? And they'll ask you, does a Spring Hill does it have a kitchen or something like that? It's like little multiple choice question type things. And some of them are like, I don't know, I'd better go look that up. To educate people, that's worth 45 cents, I think. Now that could work out to a big number that they didn't budget for, but that's a lot better than 45 cents over a 30-day period. So
Right.
I don't know.
Jeez.
Anyway, but that's the rut row. So Marriott, maybe they messed up, but they've said they haven't, that you can still do it. There's just no evidence of anybody ever, winning more
Getting
than one
something.
prize. And boy, if I was Marriott, I'd maybe shift that and do some analysis and go, oh no, uh-oh, let's go fix this. And what's our exposure? And what the heck? We want people interested in exploring our 29 brands because this is complicated and there's no way they could understand them anyway. Given Tim Peter, an expert in the industry who knows a lot of stuff, he didn't know if Spring Hills had a kitchen or not. Right?
You know, and I keep saying this every time we bring this up in topic, but we do have to bring back your guess the hotel brand and have you read off either their mission statement or show an image of the room. I mean, we did need to do that, but to that end, time wise, we should probably. Mr. Robert, if people want to know about you, Rock Cheetah, the world that you live in, the expertise that you have, the vision, the clarity, the horizon line that you have, where is it they can find you?
Well, to know all that, they have to tune in to the Hospitality Digital Marketing live show every week. Or go back to, you can tell them the archive site and they can watch hundreds of hours to figure that out.
Hundreds of hours.
That's the easiest way. Or they could go to rockcheetah.com or maybe go to @RobertKCole on social media.
Excellent. And by the way, I think somebody almost stole your logo because I now have a software called Link Cheetah. And Link Cheetah is a badass software for developing perpetual link tracking for your backlinks and so forth. It's a neat fracture of what SEO Moz usually does, SEO Moz does. And it does a really neat link tracking service.
Oh, well, the logo's different.
I know, but the fact that they took that, to me, they're infringing on your space by using the cheetah thing. I just
it's really interesting if you go into Google and you put in Rock Cheetah, you get some very interesting stuff that's not related to.
Well, it's with the archive
Cheetah Girls type thing. Yeah.
Oh, well, okay, then there's that. But for anybody that wants to watch this show in its perpetuity and all the links and topics that Robert was so generous in curating, but we didn't get to, we did get to 3 of them, which was great. If they can go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. Click on the link for show number 167. You'll be able to play this back, as well as also, I said, all the links and show notes. And all the other archive links are there, including all for the past 3 years. So you can go back and watch any of our fantastically amazing shows that we've been doing every week. With that in mind, Mr. Robert, I guess we're going to part. I have people banging on my door. I'm going to go run over and see what they're doing. Thank you very much for the time, as always, and for actually curating the content and listening, as for always your generosity and your time of being here on the show. If anybody wants to know more or participate in the show, they can also reach out to us at info@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. If you'd like to be a guest on the show as a scheduled guest, you're more than welcome to join us at any time live, should you want to join in either in the chat or on video. And, of course, for any playback on podcasts, you simply have to go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com, on iTunes, Stitcher. What else are we on? Soundboard, Google Play. We're everywhere. So the podcast is out there. So
Google now has a pretty good podcast platform. They finally got something together.
Yeah. So with that, everyone, thank you so very much for your time on listening. If you didn't watch us live, and thank you for listening to us afterwards. And for show number 168 next week, Friday, 11:30 Eastern, come join us. Until then, thank you, everyone. Bye now.